The grand hall of the Galactic Council was silent, the atmosphere tense. Representatives from all over the galaxy had gathered to negotiate peace. The future of countless worlds depended on the outcome of these talks. Among them were the Vornax, fierce warriors who ruled the outer systems, the Zal, an ancient species known for their wisdom, and many others, each with their own agenda, but none of them could deny the importance of this moment. If peace wasn't achieved, war would be inevitable. At the head of the hall stood the human ambassador James Carter. He had seen many peace talks in his time, but this one felt different. The humans had come a long way. They had fought battles, made sacrifices, and now they had a chance to shape the future of the galaxy. But would they take it? Could they trust the council to uphold their promises? The room was filled with whispers as the delegates exchanged nervous glances. The leader of the Vornax, a towering creature with sharp, glowing eyes, leaned forward, his voice rumbling like thunder. "We've been waiting for this moment," he said, his tone harsh. "The humans have made their decision. We hope they are ready to stand with us." His words echoed through the hall, but no one spoke. James Carter stepped forward. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. He looked around the room at the representatives, each one expecting something different from the humans. The council had always been divided, but today, it would be tested like never before. "The future of the galaxy lies in our hands," Carter began, his voice steady, though a hint of concern lingered. "But peace cannot be built on broken promises. We will not stand by while you make deals that sacrifice the lives of innocent people." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Carter's words were clear. The humans were here to negotiate peace, but they would not tolerate any more lies or empty agreements. "Today, we begin these talks," Carter continued. "But know this. Humans will not settle for anything less than true peace. We will stand firm on our values and we will not be swayed." A tense silence filled the hall. The Vornak leader's eyes narrowed, and he let out a low growl. But Carter remained unfazed. He had seen battles and he had seen war, but this moment was unlike any other. The stakes were high and the pressure was immense. Just as the tension seemed unbearable, a sharp voice cut through the silence. "What are the humans hiding?" It was the Zal leader, an old being whose eyes shimmered with centuries of knowledge. "Why have you come to the table with such hesitation?" Carter's gaze shifted to the Zal leader, his expression unwavering. "We come with open hands," he replied. "But we will not be part of a system that is corrupt. If we cannot trust each other, then we might as well not be here." The room was on edge. The Vornax were growing impatient, and the Zal leader's words hung heavily in the air. No one knew what the humans were planning, but it was clear that they weren't going to play by the council's rules. As Carter finished speaking, he turned and took a seat at the human delegation's table, his face unreadable. He knew that this was just the beginning. The peace talks were not going to be easy, and the path ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear. Humans were no longer the passive players in this galaxy. The Galactic Council had underestimated them before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. The hall remained silent for a moment longer, as the representatives processed Carter's words. The fate of the galaxy now rested on their ability to navigate the fragile peace. But in the back of everyone's mind, one question remained. What were the humans planning next? The Galactic Council was in an uproar. The delegates from every corner of the galaxy had come to this moment, hoping to strike a deal, hoping to end the decades of tension that had plagued their worlds. But now there was a chilling realization in the air. The humans were withdrawing. Their decision, swift and absolute, had stunned everyone in the room. James Carter, the human ambassador, stood motionless at the center of the hall. His face was calm, but his thoughts raced. He had always believed that peace could be achieved, that they could work alongside the council to build a better future. But now, he was beginning to wonder whether the cost of that peace was too high. Around him, the representatives of the council whispered furiously. The Vornax were livid, their sharp eyes flicking from one delegate to another, trying to gauge the reactions. The Zal, ever the quiet observers, seemed to contemplate the deeper meaning of the humans' actions. No one had expected this. James raised his hand, signaling for silence. It took a moment, but eventually the room fell quiet. Every eye was on him. The pressure was intense, but he knew that this was the moment. He had to explain their decision clearly. "We will not participate in these talks," James began, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "We've been here for weeks, listening, watching, waiting. But now it's time for us to step back." Murmurs rippled through the hall. The Vornax exchanged glances, their powerful jaws clenched in frustration. The Zal, however, remained still, their ancient eyes fixed on the human ambassador as if trying to read the hidden meaning behind his words. "You've made a mistake," a Vornak delegate growled. "We have waited for this moment. The galaxy has waited for this peace, and now you turn your backs on us?" James looked directly at the Vornak leader, his gaze unflinching. "We are not turning our backs," he replied, his voice cool. "But we cannot continue down a path that will lead to more suffering, more destruction. If peace is based on deceit, it is no peace at all." A tense silence followed. The Zal leader, who had been deep in thought, finally spoke. "And what do you propose, humans? To abandon us all? To walk away from the table, leaving us to face the consequences of our own actions?" James paused, carefully considering the weight of his next words. "We propose a new way forward," he said. "But it will require all of us to make sacrifices. It will require honesty, trust, and most importantly, respect for the lives of every being in this galaxy." His words were met with a mixture of disbelief and anger. The other delegates couldn't understand. How could the humans just walk away from this moment? The council had offered them a seat at the table, an opportunity to shape the future. And now they were rejecting it. "You are underestimating us," the Vornak leader sneered. "We will not allow you to walk away. If you think you can isolate yourselves from the rest of the galaxy, you are gravely mistaken." James felt the weight of those words, but he didn't back down. "We are not underestimating you," he said calmly. "But you must understand, the human race has its own path to follow. We will no longer be pawns in a game that benefits only a few. We will protect our future, and we will do so on our terms." The council was stunned into silence. The realization began to dawn on them. Humans were not just withdrawing from the talks. They were taking control of their destiny, choosing a path of self-determination. And they were not afraid to stand alone if necessary. As the room settled, the Zal leader spoke again, his voice softer but no less powerful. "Humans, you have always been unpredictable. But there is one thing I have learned over the centuries. Your strength lies not just in your power but in your unity. If you truly believe this is the only way forward, then we must respect that. But know this, there are consequences to every action." James nodded, understanding the weight of the Zal's words. "We understand," he said, "and we are prepared to face those consequences. But we will not be swayed by fear or threats. We are not afraid of the future." A ripple of unease spread through the council. The Vornax were furious, but the Zal's calm acceptance hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The humans had made their stand. But as the delegates began to exchange glances once more, a new question arose. What was next for the humans? What were they planning? James knew the galaxy had no idea what they were about to face, and that was the greatest power they held. The humans weren't just withdrawing. They were preparing for something far greater. As the session drew to a close, James turned to his fellow human delegates. "It's time," he said quietly. The humans had made their choice. They were no longer part of the council's game, and the galaxy would soon see the true extent of their power. The peace talks had just begun, but the humans had already changed the rules. The silence in the grand hall of the Galactic Council was almost unbearable. The delegates were still recovering from the shock of the humans' sudden withdrawal. The decision had been made. The humans were gone from the talks, and no one knew what to do next. It was as if a piece of the puzzle had vanished, and no one could quite figure out what came after. The Vornax were the first to break the silence. The leader of their race, a towering figure whose sharp eyes gleamed with anger, slammed his fist on the table. His voice, thick with fury, echoed through the hall. "This is an insult. The humans, who were so eager to be part of the council, are now turning their backs on us. We've spent months preparing for these talks, and now they decide to walk away without even offering an explanation." The Vornak leader's words were a thunderclap, shaking the atmosphere, but they only fueled the tension in the room. The Vornax were known for their ruthless behavior, their power, and their dominance. The humans, who had always seemed so humble in the council's eyes, were now showing a side no one had expected. What had made them pull back so suddenly? What did they know that the rest of the galaxy didn't? The Zal leader, an ancient being whose long life had given him wisdom beyond comprehension, remained calm as always. His eyes, deep and unreadable, surveyed the room. The Zal species was known for its quiet, calculating nature, but at this moment they were more than just an observer. They were the only ones in the room who had the presence of mind to understand that something far more complex was at play. What the humans have done is more than just a withdrawal, the Zal leader finally said, his voice steady and slow. It is a warning. The room fell silent once more, but this time it was not from confusion. It was from understanding. The Zal's words had struck a chord. The humans were not merely walking away. They were signaling something far more significant, something that the Council had failed to see. The Vornax were not pleased with the Zal's calm acceptance. A warning? The Vornak leader scoffed. What nonsense. We are the dominant force in this galaxy. We have crushed worlds under our boots. If the humans think they can escape us, they are gravely mistaken. The tension between the Vornax and the Zal had always been there, but it was now growing stronger. The Vornax were ready to go to war, while the Zal took a more measured approach. The rest of the Council looked to both sides, unsure of who to support. But one thing was certain. The balance of power was shifting. As the debate raged on, one of the lesser-known delegates, a small, quiet species known as the Callians, spoke up. Their voice was faint, almost drowned out by the noise, but it carried a weight that no one could ignore. Perhaps we've been looking at this all wrong, the Callian delegate said, his voice calm yet tinged with fear. What if the humans have seen something in the galaxy that we haven't? What if they know something we do not? The Council fell silent again. The Callians were not a race known for their boldness, but the question they posed hit home. The humans were not acting out of arrogance or fear. They had seen something, perhaps something that none of the other species had noticed. A dark growing force? An unseen threat? The Zal leader nodded slowly, as though the Callian words had unlocked a door in his mind. The humans have always been unpredictable, but there is something more at play here, he said. They do not make decisions lightly. If they are pulling away, there must be a reason, something we have not yet understood. The Vornak leader, frustrated and unwilling to consider any other viewpoint, slammed his fist down again. We can't afford to waste time speculating about the humans. We have to act. Their withdrawal is an act of defiance. It's an insult and it cannot stand. But the Zal leader was not swayed. If we act in haste, we may regret it. The humans are not our enemy. Not yet, at least. But if we force them into a corner, they could become the very thing we fear most. The room was split. Half the Council wanted immediate action, an attack on the humans to force them back into the talks, to remind them who held the power. The other half, led by the Zal, urged caution, advocating for diplomacy and understanding. James Carter's words echoed in the back of the Council's minds. We will not settle for anything less than true peace. Could it be that the humans were willing to fight for peace in their own way, even if it meant standing alone? As the debate continued, one thing became clear. The Council was not united. There were too many conflicting interests, too many egos at play. The peace they sought seemed more fragile than ever, and the humans' withdrawal had revealed just how divided the Council truly was. In the midst of the turmoil, the Callian delegate spoke again, this time with more conviction. What if the humans are the key to true peace? What if their withdrawal is the catalyst we needed to see the truth? We have always relied on power, on domination, but the humans, perhaps they see something in unity, something we have overlooked. His words hung in the air like a challenge. Could the humans really be the ones to bring peace, or were they a threat, a new power rising in the galaxy? The Council was at a crossroads. The decision they made in the next few hours could determine the fate of the galaxy. Would they respect the humans' choice and search for a new path? Or would they continue down the same road of conflict and war? The Galactic Council had no answers, only more questions. But one thing was certain. The humans had set the stage for something much larger than anyone could imagine. And the galaxy would soon find out what that something was. The tension in the Galactic Council was still thick, like a storm cloud hanging over the galaxy. While the delegates bickered amongst themselves, divided by the humans' bold withdrawal, far away on the planet Earth, James Carter and his team of human strategists had already begun to prepare their next move. They were no longer part of the Council's fragile peace process, but their silence spoke volumes. The galaxy would soon learn that the humans had a plan, one far more ambitious, and far more dangerous than anyone could have anticipated. James sat in a darkened room, surrounded by holographic screens filled with data, calculations, and images of the galaxy. His team of advisors, experts in military strategy, diplomacy, and technology, were gathered around him, each of them focused on a different task. The atmosphere was intense, but not out of fear. This was determination. The humans weren't retreating, they were preparing. "We need to understand what we're up against," James said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "The Council thinks we've withdrawn because we're afraid, but in truth, we've seen something they haven't. Something that will change the future of this galaxy." One of his top advisors, a brilliant strategist named Elena, stepped forward. She had been analyzing the Council's movements for months, tracking every decision and every conversation. She was the one who had uncovered the pattern, the truth that no one else had noticed. The Vornax, the Zal, the others, they all want peace. But they want it on their own terms, Elena explained, her voice sharp with focus. They don't understand that peace, real peace, requires trust. They've been playing a game of power. And the humans? We've had enough of that game, James nodded. He knew exactly what Elena meant. The humans were different. They weren't interested in domination or control. They wanted freedom, true freedom. The freedom to choose their path without being bound by the chains of a council that treated them like pawns in a galactic chess match. "We've been playing by their rules for too long," James continued. "But it's time to change the game. We'll show them that we don't need the council to secure peace. We can do it ourselves." Elena's eyes gleamed with determination. "We've already started. The first step is the artifact." James turned his attention to the hologram of the ancient artifact, a mysterious object that had been discovered on Earth's moon months before the peace talks had even begun. The artifact was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It was ancient, crafted from materials that defied analysis. But its true power remained a mystery, locked away in its strange, glowing core. "We don't fully understand what this artifact can do yet," Elena said, her fingers hovering over the hologram. "But the scans have shown us something remarkable. It's a source of energy more powerful than anything we've ever harnessed. If we can unlock its full potential..." James leaned in closer, his heart racing. "What are you saying, Elena?" She looked him in the eye, her expression resolute. "I'm saying that this artifact could be the key to everything. It could change the balance of power in the galaxy. It could give us the strength to stand alone." James let the weight of her words sink in. The Council had always believed that the humans were weak, that they could be controlled. But what if they were wrong? What if the humans held the power to reshape the future of the galaxy, to bring about a new order? The room was silent for a moment as the team processed the implications. The galaxy's mightiest races, the Vornax, the Zal, the others, they all believed that power came from military might or ancient wisdom. But the humans had something they didn't, adaptability. And with this artifact, they could take that adaptability to unimaginable heights. James stood up and turned to face the team. "We need to move quickly," he said. "The Council won't wait for us to figure this out. But we'll use that to our advantage. They think we're retreating, that we're done. They're wrong. We're just getting started." Elena nodded, already analyzing the next steps. "We'll need to isolate the artifact's energy signature first. Once we understand its potential, we can begin to manipulate it. But we'll need to be careful. The Council will be watching us, and if they realize what we're doing, they'll try to stop us," James finished for her. "But that's exactly what we want. Let them think they have control. Let them come after us. It will only prove how weak they are." There was a fire in his eyes now, a spark of something that had been missing in the Council's sterile political halls. This wasn't about diplomacy anymore. It wasn't about sitting at a table and making empty promises. This was about power, real power, the kind that the humans were ready to wield. As the meeting progressed, the plans took shape. The humans would begin by studying the artifact's energy signature more closely, but they would also prepare to defend it. There were rumors of dark forces moving in the galaxy, forces that the Council had no intention of facing, but the humans had already seen the warning signs. They would prepare for the worst, and they would do so on their own terms. "We won't fight like they do," James said, his voice filled with a quiet confidence. "We won't use their methods, their tactics. We'll use what makes us human, our creativity, our determination, and our ability to adapt. The Council won't know what hit them. Outside, the galaxy continued to turn, oblivious to the storm that was brewing. The council members were still arguing, still trying to pick up the pieces of what had been shattered. But far from their prying eyes, the humans were forging their own path. They were ready to fight, ready to win, and they would do it on their own terms. The game had changed, and this time, the humans were in control. Days turned into weeks, and yet the council still found itself in a state of disarray. The humans' sudden departure from the peace talks had left the galaxy in a state of nervous anticipation. No one knew what the humans were planning, but everyone was starting to realize that they had underestimated them. The stakes were higher than ever. The Vornax, the Zal, and every other species that had once been in control were now feeling the weight of their own arrogance. In the heart of the Galactic Council, there was panic. The Vornax, who had always been so sure of their place at the top of the galaxy's power structure, were now acting out of pure desperation. Their leader, Cathar, paced back and forth in the council chamber, his fists clenched in frustration. He was a creature used to conquering, used to imposing his will upon others. But the humans had done something none of them expected. They had walked away from the table, leaving the council scrambling for answers. "They are a threat," Cathar growled, his voice filled with venom. "If we don't act quickly, we will lose everything." The Zal leader, Zanara, remained as calm as ever, but there was a glint of concern in her ancient eyes. She was the one who had warned the council of the humans' potential, but now she too was beginning to fear the consequences of their withdrawal. The humans had always been unpredictable, but now, they were showing a side that was not just unpredictable, it was dangerous. "We must understand what they are planning," Zanara said softly, her voice cutting through the tension. "We cannot afford to act out of fear. We must know their next move." The Vornak leader shot her a sharp look. "And how do you suggest we do that?" "The humans have sealed themselves off. They refuse to share their plans. They've hidden themselves in the shadows, and we are left to wonder what lies ahead." Zanara's eyes narrowed as she considered his words. "It is not just their secrecy that should concern us, Cathar. It is the fact that they are not acting in the way we expect. The humans are not trying to dominate us, nor are they trying to destroy us. They are biding their time, preparing for something, and I fear that when they strike, it will be too late for us to stop them." The council chamber fell silent, the weight of Zanara's words settling on everyone in the room. The humans were not playing the council's game. They were playing their own game, one that no one understood. Not even the Vornax, with all their might, or the Zal with all their wisdom. As the council members continued to argue, a low mechanical hum interrupted the chaos. A large holographic projection appeared in the center of the room, drawing the attention of everyone present. It was an image of the humans' home planet, Earth. The projection zoomed in on a massive underground facility hidden deep within the Earth's crust. "This is where it begins," said a voice that echoed through the chamber. It was James Carter's voice, calm and composed, yet carrying a sense of finality. The hologram shifted, showing a detailed map of Earth's underground facilities, filled with advanced technology and structures that seemed to defy all known principles of engineering. The artifact, the one that had been discovered on the moon, was now a focal point of their operations. The humans had not been sitting idle. They had been preparing something that the council had not yet comprehended. "Do you see this?" Carter's voice continued. "This is the future we are building, not just for humans, but for every species that values freedom. We have spent centuries hiding from our true potential, but no more. We will rise, and we will do so on our own terms." The council was speechless. The projection revealed secret operations, energy patterns, and technology that the galaxy had never seen. The humans had been working in isolation, but now they were revealing their hand, and it was more powerful than anything the council had ever imagined. The Vornax were the first to speak, their voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. "This is impossible," Cathar muttered, his eyes darting between the holographic map and the other delegates. "How have they kept this from us? How have they developed this kind of power in secret?" Zanara, her mind already piecing together the implications, whispered, "They didn't just retreat. They were preparing, and now they are ready." The Vornak leader's anger flared again. "We cannot allow this. If the humans have this kind of power, they will become a force too great to control. We must take action before it's too late." But Zanara, always the voice of reason, placed a hand on the table and addressed the room with quiet authority. Acting out of anger will only push the humans further away. We need to understand them, not fight them. We cannot afford to make the same mistakes again. The tension in the room was palpable. The Vornax, enraged by the humans' defiance, wanted nothing more than to destroy them. But the Zal, ever cautious, feared that any rash action would lead to their own downfall. The council was at a crossroads, and no one knew which path would lead to survival. In the midst of the chaos, the hologram flickered once more, this time revealing a final image. It was an ancient text, a prophecy that had been hidden for centuries. The text spoke of a unifying force, a species that would rise from the ashes of conflict to lead the galaxy into a new era. The humans, it seemed, had known this prophecy all along. They were always meant to be the ones to lead us, Zanara said softly, her voice filled with both awe and trepidation. The prophecy is clear. The humans were not just retreating, they were preparing to take their place in the galaxy's future. And just like that, the true weight of the humans' decision hit the council. The galaxy's power structure was shifting, and they had no control over it anymore. The humans had withdrawn not out of fear, but out of necessity. They were preparing to lead, and the rest of the galaxy would have to choose: adapt or be left behind. The council's desperation grew. They could no longer afford to ignore the humans. The time for negotiation was over. The question now was whether the galaxy could accept the humans' rise to power, or whether they would resist and face the consequences. The tension in the Galactic Council was palpable, thick like a heavy fog that none of the members could break through. Each member had spent weeks agonizing over the humans' withdrawal from the peace talks. But now the galaxy was approaching a tipping point. The humans had made their position clear. They were no longer interested in playing by the Council's rules. And yet, as much as the Council wanted to dismiss them as arrogant upstarts, there was a growing sense of fear. The sudden silence in the Council chamber was broken by a chilling broadcast. The screen flickered to life, displaying a black and white holographic image of James Carter, the human ambassador. His expression was unreadable, his eyes sharp with resolve. Behind him, a faint hum of machinery could be heard, a reminder of the artifact they had unearthed, its power looming over the galaxy like a shadow. "Greetings, Council," Carter's voice rang out, cool and controlled yet carrying an undeniable edge. "I trust you've had enough time to consider our decision. And now it's time for you to make yours." The words hung in the air, each syllable adding weight to the already heavy atmosphere. The council members exchanged nervous glances. They knew what this was, an ultimatum. The humans had withdrawn, not to retreat, but to set the stage for a challenge they had no idea how to counter. We, the humans, have chosen a path that the council cannot follow. We have seen the galaxy for what it truly is, a battlefield of egos, lies, and broken promises. But we are not here to fight your wars. We are here to protect our future, and if we must stand alone to do so, we will. James paused for a moment, letting his words sink in before continuing. However, there is still a chance for the Council to avoid what is coming. We are offering you a choice. Either you will respect our autonomy and the new future we are creating, or you will stand against us. If you choose the latter, then understand this: we will not back down. The galaxy will know the true power of humanity. The broadcast ended, leaving the room frozen in stunned silence. No one knew how to react. The humans had not just made a declaration of independence, they had also signaled that they were ready for war, if necessary. Cathar, the Vornak leader, was the first to speak. His voice was filled with boiling rage. "This is unacceptable. The humans think they can challenge us. They think they can rise up against the might of the Vornak Empire and the entire Galactic Council. They are nothing." Zanara, the Zal leader, stood up, her calm demeanor belying the urgency in her tone. "Cathar, we cannot ignore what has just happened. The humans have demonstrated something that we have long underestimated. They have power, real power, and we must consider the consequences of underestimating them further." "What are you suggesting, Zanara?" Cathar snapped. "That we simply accept their terms? That we bow to their demands?" "No," Zanara replied firmly, her voice steady. "I am suggesting that we recognize that the humans have reached a point where they no longer need us. They have the strength to challenge the entire council, and if we do not act wisely, they will rise to become the galaxy's new force. The prophecy speaks of this, of a species that would change the course of the galaxy. Perhaps that species is humanity. A murmur of shock spread across the room. The prophecy, the ancient legend that the council had long dismissed as a myth, was suddenly being taken seriously. The humans were not simply acting out of defiance. They were acting according to something far greater than anyone had realized. The Vornak leader shook his head, refusing to believe it. A prophecy? This is nothing more than a human trick. They're trying to scare us into submission. But what if they're right? One of the lesser-known delegates, a quiet and introspective member of the Zero species, spoke up. His voice was small, but it carried the weight of truth. What if they have found something beyond what we can comprehend? They have the artifact, and we still do not fully understand its power. Perhaps they know something we do not. The council grew quiet, and for the first time in weeks, a sense of doubt began to creep into the hearts of the council members. They had always relied on their collective strength, on the fear they instilled in others. But now the humans had flipped the script. They were no longer afraid, no longer willing to play by the council's rules. They were the ones with the upper hand. Zanara, ever the voice of reason, spoke once more. We need to think about what's at stake. If we stand against them, the humans may unleash something far more destructive than we can handle. The galaxy is already teetering on the edge of chaos. War could destroy everything we've built, but if we offer them the respect they demand, we might be able to avoid the worst. Cathar's eyes flashed with anger, but even he could not dismiss the truth in Zanara's words. He clenched his fists, his pride wounded by the thought of negotiating with the humans. But deep down he knew that the humans had outplayed them. They had positioned themselves as a force to be reckoned with, and the council had no choice but to respond. The room fell into silence as the council members weighed their options. The humans had set the stage, and now the council had to decide how they would play their next move. Would they risk everything in an attempt to crush the humans? Or would they acknowledge the rising power and seek a new path forward? After what felt like an eternity, Zanara spoke again, her voice calm but firm. We must give the humans what they want or face the consequences. We have no other choice. And so, for the first time in the council's history, the decision was made. Not by strength, but by the undeniable power of the humans' will to survive. The future of the galaxy was no longer in the hands of the council. It rested with humanity, and the galaxy would soon discover just how far the humans were willing to go to secure their place in it. The Galactic Council had never been more divided. The decision they had to make now wasn't just about politics or power, it was about survival. For the first time in their long, storied history, they were up against an unknown force, one that had not only withdrawn from the talks but had presented an ultimatum that no one had seen coming. Humanity had not only shocked them, they had awakened something deep within the council, a fear they couldn't ignore. In the days following James Carter's chilling broadcast, the council members had retreated to their individual chambers, trying to make sense of the humans' intentions. There were whispers of rebellion, of a potential war that would reshape the galaxy. But as the hours passed, the council realized that fighting was no longer a matter of strength or might. It was a matter of understanding. Zanara, the Zal leader, had become increasingly restless. She had been quiet for days, meditating on the implications of what had transpired. It was not like her to be so uncertain, but the humans had done something the council had never expected. They had walked away not out of cowardice but out of strength. They had shown the galaxy that they were not afraid to stand alone, and that made them more dangerous than any other species. As the council reconvened, a sense of unease filled the chamber. Every eye was on James Carter's holographic image, which hovered above the central table. His eyes were calm, but there was a fire behind them, a confidence that unnerved everyone in the room. "I've given you a choice," Carter's voice echoed in the chamber. "Now it's time for you to decide. You can continue to resist, to play your games of power, or you can choose to embrace a future where the galaxy doesn't have to be defined by war and deceit." The Vornak leader, Cathar, clenched his fists as he listened to Carter's words. "You talk as if you hold all the cards, human. You think we're afraid of you?" Carter's gaze hardened. "You should be. The days of your rule are over. You've lived in the shadows for too long, pulling strings behind closed doors. The humans are not here to play games. We've seen through your schemes, and we've learned that the only way forward is for all species to stand equally." The council chamber was dead silent. It was the Zal leader who broke the tension, her voice soft but sharp. "What you are asking, human, is not a simple thing. We have built this order over millennia. To tear it down would be to risk everything. Exactly, Carter replied, his tone unwavering. You've built this system on the backs of others, and it's been nothing more than a series of lies. The galaxy has suffered because of it. The humans may not have the ancient wisdom of the Zal, nor the strength of the Vornax, but we have something more important, the will to survive and the strength to change. The council was divided, but deep down they all knew something had shifted. The humans had become a force to be reckoned with, and no amount of power or influence could change that. The Vornax, however, were not ready to give up their pride. Cathar growled, his voice dripping with disdain. This is treason. We are the ruling species of this galaxy. How dare you challenge us? James Carter stood tall, his eyes cold. I challenge you to open your eyes. The galaxy is changing. You can either accept that and find a way to coexist, or you can continue fighting a war you can never win. The humans are not just going to sit back and watch anymore. We're going to lead, and you can either join us or stand against us. There was no turning back now. Carter's words had done something the council had feared but never anticipated. They had shaken the very foundation of their existence. The Zal, with their wisdom, and the Vornax, with their might, had lived in a system where they were the unquestioned rulers. But humanity had shown them that power could come from a different place, from unity, from purpose, and from the will to shape the future. Zinara, the Zal leader, looked at the hologram of Carter and sighed deeply. We have been blind, haven't we? Her voice was not one of defeat, but of recognition. For centuries we've lived by the old rules. But the humans, they've forced us to see something different. The galaxy is not a place for endless war. It's a place for cooperation, for growth, for change. The council was silent, but the atmosphere had shifted. The realization was slowly dawning on them that they had been playing a losing game. The galaxy had evolved, and the humans, with their willpower and their strength, were the new force on the horizon. The question was no longer how to stop them, but how to coexist with them. Cathar's anger had not subsided, but it was tempered by a reluctant respect. We cannot simply bow to the humans, he said, his voice low. But perhaps it is time to recognize them as equals, not enemies. This is an unprecedented shift. The Zal leader nodded. Yes, it is. The humans have taught us a valuable lesson. We cannot continue to rule with an iron fist. We must learn to listen, to work together. If we are to build a future, we must build it together. The other delegates, their faces etched with disbelief, began to murmur amongst themselves. The reality of the situation was sinking in. The humans had not just defied them, they had opened their eyes. And now the council had no choice but to adapt. James Carter's hologram flickered for a moment, and then his voice rang out one final time. I've made my offer. Now the galaxy will decide. We will create a new future, one where all species can live in peace, or we will create a future where war will be the only option. And with that, the hologram faded, leaving the council members in stunned silence. The decision was now theirs to make. The humans had shown them a new way forward, but it was not clear whether the council would accept it. One thing was certain, the galaxy would never be the same again. The humans had claimed their place in the stars, and the council had no choice but to reckon with that reality.